If we just look at this still shot here, the cloaked, masked people forming a ring around the red-cloaked priest, it could actually look like they were children. And of course, Kubrick can't show us kids in a scene like this, but he can indicate what type of stuff actually goes on at Occult, elite Occult parties like these. This is not the only indication in this sequence of the movie that indicates that, but it's one of them. And I'll mention the other one when we get there. So again, at this moment, he's not fully in his normal state of consciousness. He's like in this interstice with one foot on land, one foot in the ocean of the subconscious. And what do we see here? We see the orange hair, which is very key in the movie. Whenever you see a woman with orange hair in the movie, you need to think, okay, what does she represent in the story? Because there's a sequence here of redheads that form different archetypal steps in a certain journey. What I also like to notice here is how she's quite similar to his wife Alice. Like with the hair, both having orange hair, the way the hair sort of falls down their face. And her husband is quite reminiscent of Bill, actually. But now we have like the death of the father, right? The death of the patriarch. And now sort of these subconscious forces are coming out to play in this woman, as we will see shortly. Because the father figure is kind of like the sort of male god figure who has been suppressing, whose religion has been suppressing women. So the death of the father, I think, is very evocative of sort of the death of God, if you will. And now the suppressed goddess religion and all these suppressed subconscious urges are like coming to the surface. These things, these sexual drives that have been suppressed ever since the Second Temple period in Israel, where the Asherah cults, the goddess cults in Israel and Canaan, were denounced by the priesthood and they went full monotheism. They denounced that religion, they denounced priestesses, and I think that this is actually where you could say that the suppression of women in the West began, the Second Temple period in Israel. And of course from there, we have the spirit of Judeo-Christian values and worldviews that led to, the world that we are moving out of now, where women have been heavily suppressed, right? But here in the scene, the father has died, and this woman is no longer content with just playing housewife anymore. She's attracted to Bill, and she is going to let that be known. There is, of course, also the possibility that Bill is imagining this, or maybe he's picking up on something. He's picking up on her desire towards him, or maybe he's sort of like trying to bandage himself by thinking that she's interested in him. Either way, he is becoming more conscious and more curious about what goes on behind the facade of things, what goes on specifically on inside women, right? And here we see that she kisses him, and he is shocked, but he's also a little bit slow to withdraw. Again, maybe this actually happens, maybe it doesn't, but it's not really important. The important thing is what is going on inside his mind. So whether or not it's going on, and he's picking up on it or imagining it, it shows his curiosity towards the feminine. And what also sees, like, this is a woman who is probably very sexually repressed. She's been sexually repressed, she's been following the society script, wealthy father, the patriarch in her life, and, probably had expectations to go to a certain school, get a certain education, get a husband, get married, move to the suburbs, have kids, the whole society script. And now her husband arrives, and I think that he kind of looks quite similar to Bill, actually, with the hair and whatnot. And I think he's a math teacher. So we're kind of seeing a parallel, and I do think that it could very well be that Bill is imagining this scenario play out. Like, what if this was to happen? Like, certainly this also applies to other marriages as well, where women desire other men, or, So he's seeing this elsewhere as well, outside his own marriage. Or maybe he's not seeing it, maybe he's just imagining it. Who knows? And this is like the space that Kubrick likes to operate within. It's like this interstice between the real and the unreal, or the dream world and the waking world, and is kind of like this very surreal space that he explores. Right, and we continue to see him just walking through these labyrinthine streets of New York, his eyes drawn inwards, and now he's becoming conscious again of the unconscious, the sexual, the instinctual everywhere, right? People kissing, he's imagining his woman getting it on with a sailor. You know, he's seeing like this underworld around him now that he wasn't conscious of before. But he's not fully like accepting it yet. He's very much tormented by it. Yeah, we also have like adult stores that he's passing. And this is very key, right? So right here we see a group of young men, and all of them are Yale students. And if you're familiar with Yale, then you'd know that there are a lot of secret societies there, including Skulls and Bones, where the two Bushes went to. So these are all Yale guys, right? And they're probably rich kids. Maybe some of them are part of some of these, one of the many secret societies at Yale. And of course, JFK, John F. Kennedy, he held a speech warning the American public about secret societies and how there were all these secret society members in Washington in place of power and finance who were basically brothers and give each other, help each other out.
And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
I think that Kubrick puts these guys in there to show that this is a type of maturity level that the upcoming politicians have, the upcoming, giants of Wall Street and whatnot have. These are basically, they're barely more evolved than a group of apes. And some of these guys might even end up in the cult as well. Who knows? But I think it's very, very key. Right? But also he feels like his masculinity is threatened. So this is also something that he might imagine, that these guys are kind of humiliating him and making fun of him. But I also see it as significant that they come from Yale, where these very prominent secret societies are as well. But again, there's so much that's going on in every scene, and it's on multiple potential levels. So you kind of have to be able to look at this diamond that is the movie from different angles to really get a sense of its multi-dimensionality, to really appreciate it. And now we have Domino, one of the street hookers that are very important in the movie. And notice here what she's wearing. Notice that she's actually wearing, ermine. Is a material, a hide that was used by royalty.
Down where the world go flows, there's a Russian rum there goes. Where me and I fun goes, but I'd rather go with.
And here we see the color purple again, which I think is not the color you see the most in the movie, but I think it's the most important color in the movie because it's a combination of the two colors that we see the most in the movie, namely blue and red. We see that everywhere in cars, we see that we just see it in storefronts right next to each other, blue and green, blue and red, all over the place. In combination, of course, that is purple. And purple in the esoteric school of philosophy of Kabbalah is attributed to the level of consciousness known as Yesod, meaning foundation. And Yesod is the lunar sphere of the unconscious, of the dreamscape, and of our sexual nature. So whether or not this is a Kabbalistic color symbolism, it certainly is interesting to contemplate. And I wonder if that phone is actually calling at that point, if it actually is Alice calling him, or if it's more like his sort of conscience who is kind of like sort of ringing in his mind, if you will.
Nightingale.
Hey, Bill, you made it.
Yeah, listen, I'm sorry. I got here just as...
By the way, some people say that is Stanley Kubrick sitting there next to them. It actually does look like him, but it certainly isn't. But it's funny, like, if he was like, yeah, I want to, video bomb the movie, but it's not me, it's just going to be an actor. And it's very interesting with Nick here, when he kind of leans over, like this almost crystal ball, he kind of looks almost devilish, like with his little beard and everything. So this is also very much sort of like a devil's temptation type scene where he's tempting Bill to go to this party where all these beautiful women are. Yeah, so this is a code in this movie, but in the book, the code is actually Denmark. Fun fact. Now this scene we see here is super key because we hear the young women at the first party they were at saying, don't you want to go to where the rainbow ends? And what do we see here? We see that the store is called Rainbow Fashions.
Where does it say it's called Rainbow Fashion?
So it says Rainbow, and it is called Rainbow Fashions. He says that the guy who owns the place.
Okay.
And of course, do you know what happens in there?
Some naughty stuff.
Some naughty business indeed. And the thing is, it's the same in the book. It's the same in the book as well. The tailor store in the book that he goes to also has not just clothes, but also PDF files. So there's a cage into the tailor, because what we find is that there is a young girl there. And what we also find is that there are predators there. So you could see this almost being her being caged in there, being trapped in there, and at the same time also that he's stepping into where the predators are. And of course you see here Rainbow again, before the room where he of course where we find, you know, the girl and the two Japanese businessmen.
What is it? What on earth is going on here?
I can explain everything.
You! What's your idea? It's you. You know, say something, I say!
What is interesting with the fact that they are Japanese businessmen is that it shows that this is an international operation. So the movie, instead of having to, you know, jump to different locations, it shows that this is a worldwide trafficking business, basically.
Couldn't you see she's a child?
Notice how like she's not even like afraid of him, and she immediately runs over to him and like grabs a hold of him. And I mean, she's basically just been taught how to seduce men and policemen ever since she was probably a child, a little kid. You know? So the most important question is not so much how old is she here, but how old was she when she started to be sort of given out to men.
Well, I suppose you'd like the password.
If you'd like, sir.
Fidelio.
Thank you, sir. We'll run you up to the house.
Fun fact is that the mansion here was originally built for the Rothschilds. If we just look at this still shot here, the cloaked, masked people forming a ring around the red-cloaked priest, they could actually look like they were children. And of course, Kubrick can't show us kids in a scene like this, but he can indicate what type of stuff actually goes on at sex cult, elite sex cult parties like these. This is not the only indication in this sequence of the movie that indicates that, but it's one of them. And I'll mention the other one when we get there. So again, we still see them, the cloaked people, looking very short indeed in this scene. And this of course becomes all the more disturbing when you find out what their function is. But as it turns out, they are in fact prostitutes, priestesses in the sex cult. However, back in the heyday of the goddess religion, back in ancient Canaan, ancient Mesopotamia and Sumer, they of course, the priestesses in the Venusian cults had a very, very high standing. But after the Second Temple period, which suppressed women and priestesses and sort of denounced them, we of course had a patriarchal takeover of various religions and goddess religions. One note about the masks here, of course they are wearing the masks for anonymity's sake, but I also see it as sort of the cult members actually sort of showing who they really are, because many of them were actually present at Victor's party, where they were just dressed in tuxedos and dresses and had on their friendly, smiling, cordial faces on. But those friendly, smiling, cordial faces, that's their true mask. Their true face is these distorted, demonic, monstrous masks that they're wearing in this mansion, which is at the outskirts of New York, at the outskirts of civilization, where the devils come out to play. So I very much see these masks as their true faces. So yeah, them kneeling in this ceremony, I very much see as sort of, it very much shows you how these women who used to be high-standing priestesses in these cults, now they're kneeling before a male priest, right? So it shows that yes, it is a Venusian cult that has survived from the Near East into modern-day New York, but within a patriarchal context where these priestesses are now kneeling before the male priest. And here we see two masked figures that kind of spots Bill. I actually think that this might be Victor and his wife, but of course we can't tell. But maybe some of you guys out there are very good at noticing people's eyes or whatever. I don't know. And I'm kind of thinking that he might actually be outing himself as being an outsider here, because you know how like the Freemasons have all kind of handshakes and stuff like that. It could be that they have certain ways of greeting each other, where those up here they are high standing, they're not like this, and those beneath they sort of bow or something. So that could actually be one of the reasons why they know that he's not part of the cult. Also coupled with the fact that he's standing by himself. So again, the man in the cult has all the power. The women are sex objects, glorified sex objects, who kneel and who are told to go and go please one of the male attendants here. And this is the high priestess, I believe, in the cult. She also has like the crest above her mask, and she sort of carries herself with quite the gravitas in this scene. And back in the day, the high priestess would be the one to run the show, to run the cult. But here she is sort of, the highest standing of the prostitutes. But the high priestesses back in these ancient cults had certain abilities, psychic abilities, and so does this character as well, because she kind of figures out that the man behind the mask is actually Bill. This mask always kills me. He looks like, I don't know, like a morning cereal character or something. And of course we also have, Middle Eastern music, which I also think is cubic, giving us an indication where this cult, or where it originates from. Yeah, this scene very much speaks for itself, right? So what we see here is that it's very much a degenerated Venus cult, because back in the day it would have been like a spiritual practice, It would have been a beautiful spiritual practice that was about elevating one's consciousness. But this is of course pure carnality, right? Purely pleasure-based, and it's purely in the physical, right? It's all about those lower chakras, and so it's the sex without the alchemy, So again, we see that the women are controlled by the men in this cult, right? It's the men who rule this cult. Once again, the original goddess cults, it was the women who ruled things, and who took men in, worthy men who were worthy, were seen as being ready and mature enough to start exaltifying their nature. So these women would help men do that, yes, through the sexual act, but not for physical pleasure, but to again alchemize the sexual energy to activate those high levels of our awareness. And again, she has psychic abilities, no doubt. She knows she's not part of the cult, and also now she knows that a god is coming before he arrives. So very much see that she's a high priestess of a deranged, degenerated, Venus cult, but we still see that these women retain some of their power and abilities, and of course, like a lot of compassion, right? She's really sort of putting herself in harm's way to help him out.
It's Mandy, dude.
Yeah, it's Mandy. Yeah. But do you think she knows that it's Bill? Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, so for you guys who don't know that, the High Priestess here is the woman that Bill helped out at Victor's party at the beginning of the movie. And here we see Nick being taken out of the mansion. And notice here we have two men dancing with each other. And we also have two women over there and two women right here. Right, so we see that there is sex everywhere. Men can have sex with each other, women can have sex with each other. But still we have a hallway with guards standing in front of doors. And that's where I would ask, like, what is going on in there, right? If there is sort of sex everywhere and you can do whatever you want, what would you need to hide, right? And I think this is Kubrick processing a question, or at least inviting us to ask that question of what goes on behind these private quarters in the mansion. Might it be members who are a little bit more shy and don't want to be out there having sex in front of everybody? Or could it be that something is going on behind those doors that Kubrick can't really show in a movie like this? And that is, yeah, and I won't say anything more than that. Oh yeah, another thing, so the mansion here was originally built for the Rothschilds, and the Rothschilds held a very infamous masked party, and there are photos of it online, you guys can check it out, but I'll show some of them. But I do find the mask that looks most like a human face the most creepy.
The password for the house.
Yes?
I seem to have forgotten it.
Ooh.
Unfortunate. Because here, it doesn't matter whether you have forgotten it, or if you never knew it.
Oh.
You will kindly remove your mask.
That's my doctor! What is he doing here, that lowly scum?
Now, get undressed.
So, what do you think they want to do with him? So we have a cult, and they tell him to get undressed. Don't you think it could be even worse than that? What do you guys think? Leave it in the comments, maybe not. Anyway, just something to contemplate. Like, what would they do after that?
Remove your clothes. Or would you like us to do it for you?
Stop!
This is Christ mode right there, self-sacrifice.
I warn you, if you make any further inquiries, or if you say a single word to anyone,
very important detail here, what he says right here.
there will be the most dire consequences for you
and your family. Very, very important detail. Right, so if he says anything about what happened that night, it will be really bad for him and his family. So keep that in mind. It's going to be very important when we reach the end of the movie. And also like this detail right here, right, her being taken away, and like this last look that she gives Bill. Remember that as well. So it's very significant that he goes into his daughter to check in on her first, to make sure that she's safe, she's there, she's good. Again, remember her name, Helena, named after Helen of Troy, but who originally lived elsewhere, who was kidnapped as a kid, 12 years old, by Theseus. So I'm curious whether or not he actually has the mask with him. if he's actually there or if he forgot at the party. And if you're wondering whether or not Bill and Alice actually represent Adam and Eve, then this scene will verify it for you that they indeed do represent Adam and Eve. And this is a horrifyingly scary scene. And notice, by the way, up here in the corner that we have the curtains drawn and we have a pillar moving between them. See, that is a sexual symbol right there. But this is so crazy. She was like laughing when he got in there, right? And in the dream, she's laughing at him while she's having sex with a bunch of guys within a orgy of hundreds of people. I've been pondering whether or not Alice might actually have been a part of the cult and been through some sort of brainwashing or something like that, because the dreams she has are just not normal. Like having a dream about gaming with hundreds of people and laughing at your man. It could be that she's been at mansion parties like that and she just doesn't remember that it's been deeply, deeply, deeply repressed inside her unconscious, and that it kind of bubbles to the surface as dreams of gaming. It could, of course, also be that she's so sexually frustrated that it just sort of bubbles up into these crazy fantasies. Either way, it's a wild dream to have.
And our clothes were gone.
Right, so this is Adam and Eve, right, before they ate from the fruit of knowledge and realized that they were naked.
We were naked, and I felt ashamed. And I was angry because I thought it was your fault. You rushed away to go and find clothes for us. As soon as you were gone, I felt wonderful.
So like, it's wild, right? But it's similar to like how the daughter of the client who died felt sort of, as I saw, sort of her sexual urges kind of came to the surface after her father died, after the patriarch died, right? And here you have Alice being a housewife, basically, you know, an at-home wife, who is very sexually repressed and frustrated and not satisfied in her life, in her marriage, and doesn't feel seen by her husband, and they don't have this deep romance. And so him kind of, so he is like a patriarch, right? He's the breadwinner, he's a doctor, and he sort of has fully sort of been inculcated into this very materialistic sort of male-dominated society where we have sort of shunned the subconscious and all the mysteries and all the sensuality and the feminine values and the sexual nature that we all have. So it's not that she doesn't love Bill, but him going away allows her freedom, because she doesn't, and I think that many women feel like that they're not really free in their relationships to fully sort of step into that sex goddess mode, you know, that priestess mode where they fully just embrace who they are and express who they are. I think many women are very, very suppressed in their femininity, and including men. Like, men's femininity is also very, very suppressed. So that's how I read that. And also the navel officer, of course, having to do with the sea being a symbol of the unconscious. It's all highly symbolic. Right, so now he knows, right? Now he knows that there is so much more beneath the surface, so much more going on inside of the wife. So he's still disturbed, understandably, but he's also curious about it. He wants to know more, right? So his initiation is not complete yet. He doesn't have his eyes wide shut, but they are partially shut, if you will. I think it's actually very possible that she actually even knows about the occult, or maybe has had something to do with it. And that these memories have become very, very deeply embedded to the point where she doesn't remember them anymore. She doesn't have access to them anymore. So these experiences that she's had in mansions parties, like the one that Bill was in, are kind of sort of being expressed through her dreams.
I was fucking other men. So many. And I knew you could see me. And so I laughed as loud as I could.
Like, remember that, you know, Eve is the first one to eat of the fruit of knowledge. Eve represents the priestesses of the Asher occults. Adam represents the man who is initiated by the priestesses who provide them the forbidden fruit and facilitates their spiritual growth into heightened awareness, into enlightenment. But what happens is that Eve, of course, is made the subject of Adam, right? The property of Adam, and that became the reality of women for hundreds of years, thousands of years after that myth was written. Right? That became the main paradigm of relationships in Europe during the Middle Ages, and it followed us all the way into the 1950s and 60s, and then sort of women started, getting more and more rights. But the thing is that the women's standing hasn't moved from shitty to less shitty to somewhat okay to better to equal. It's more like a hockey stick, where they once had exceedingly high status as priestesses, and then that was taken from them, and they were made into the property of their husbands, right? As we see with Adam getting possession of his wife Eve, something that represented a social shift. So there is like a resentment, I think, towards the husband, and I see that here in Alice, laughing at Bill, humiliating him while she's being sort of sexually liberated and just doing whatever she wants, right? It's sort of like, I see it almost like a revenge upon the husband, upon the patriarch, upon sort of her enslaver, if you will. Not that Bill is her enslaver, but sort of just the archetype of the husband. And that is the end of part 2 of our esoteric Easter account of Eyes Wide Shut. See you in part 3.